Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on conceal carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And this is the calm before the storm.
Yeah, if we can even call this calm.
Yeah, I know, right? The week before, either everything goes to hell in a handbasket or the entire nation opens back up again. I don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I think it's I don't think it's going to be good no matter what happens. I think no matter what happens, it's going to be a little
I got to be honest with you. For the last probably week and a half, I've had this huge feeling like Trump's winning again.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Like, I know all the polls are like, he's not going to win. I'm like, they said the same thing about Hillary, but I just have this feeling like there are so many people who do not want to admit that they're voting for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when those pollster calls, they're just like, click, hang up the phone.
Yeah. Well, I was watching a little bit of Daily Wire right after the last debate, and one of the things he pointed out, he's like, you guys recognize that a lot of this is about the people that hold their noses and vote for Trump. He says that you have, if they're mad at him, then they'll be like, I'd just rather not do anything. But those people, when they see a performance like they saw at this last debate, where he was calmer, he made some decent points, he did pretty well parry anything that Biden brought up, and usually would kind of throw it back around. And his whole thing was like, that Trump is winning when Biden says, "Come on, man," because he's not making an argument. He just says something, and he's like, "Come on, man." That's his tell. That's when like he's got nothing. And there was a lot of "come on, mans" from Biden.
Really?
And so
I didn't watch it.
It was interesting. I watched it. And it still made me mad. I was still trying to do other things and distract myself from it. But I watched it. It was the best I have seen. I do not like Trump. You guys know I'm not a Trump fan at all. Right. I really don't like Biden, though.
Right. That's the thing.
So I'm watching this thing go down. And then there's honestly a lot of Christians like me, because we know that there's a whole bunch of Christians, I'll just speak honestly, that have forfeited their testimony by blindly supporting Trump.
Yes.
Right? Trump is a wicked man. A wicked man who I would say is probably deceiving conservative Christians to some degree. And yet, he has, in his deception, still done more for conservatives than I believe Hillary would have, and I'm certain more than Biden would.
Right.
And so when I'm looking at this, I'm like, you have Biden promising to do wicked, evil things, and you have Trump who's going to do some wicked, evil things, but promises a couple of things that he's delivered on a couple of those things. And I remember somebody was asking me after he got elected, initially, they're like, what do you think about all this? And I'm like, I'm honestly surprised. He's doing some of the things he said he would do, and I absolutely didn't think he would do them. And so I'm like, there's a lot of guys like me that are like, I do not like this guy. I want to be against him, but I also want to be against the other guy more. Right. And so you have a debate like the one last week where Trump comes off a whole lot better than he normally does. And the guys that are in my camp, and I'm not saying I'm going to vote for him, but the guys who are in my camp are like, well, maybe, there's a whole bunch of those that I think are going to be more willing to cast a vote for him now than they would have otherwise. And the more crazy that the Democratic Party becomes, the more you got a whole lot of those quiet conservatives that are like, well, I don't really like Trump, but yeah. The other option is so bad. And which, by the way, it just sucks we're in this situation. Like, no matter how you look at this.
Here's kind of the funny thing for me. So one of my good friends, we've talked about her before. She's like living in Virginia, moving to West Virginia. That started our whole West Virginia conversation where you're giving me the lowdown on it. So I noticed like a week or two ago, she posted something on Facebook, and it was like, interested in Joe Jorgensen, and she didn't. And the thing is, like, her day job is like working for this Republican like marketing firm. And I was like, and I think she put something, and I like asked her, I'm like, are you not voting for Trump? Because I was like, there's no way she's got to be voting for Trump. She's like, I'm undecided. And, you know, she goes, my libertarian friends are making some really good points right now.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you know, I'm kind of, so she hasn't decided yet, but I responded with, look, I live in California. My vote doesn't count anyway, so I'm not wasting it on Trump. Like, this is California. Jo Jorgensen, even though I don't agree with her on some really important issues, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter in California. California is not in any way, shape, or form a swing state. It's just not. Yeah. So it's like, why waste my vote on a guy that I can't stand?
Yeah. So
I mean, I can't stand Biden more, but it doesn't matter in California. He's winning California. Our 55 electoral votes, they already chalked him up on the board for him.
Yeah. Well, in Ohio and Pennsylvania, the conversation goes a little bit differently.
Yeah, it does.
Or even in West Virginia. But I keep just going back to I keep thinking of like, man, if we had just had a reasonable Republican candidate, where we would be. And I still blame Jerry Falwell Jr., by the way, who I am convinced was leveraged to do what he did to promote Trump when he did. So they got him winning that election. I keep thinking, like, can you imagine a Rand Paul right now? Or even 4 years ago, Rand Paul saying like, "Hey man, let's legalize weed and let's decriminalize." This is the guy who supported the Breonna Taylor bill to go against no-knock raids, right? This guy is a Republican, right? And like that guy, like there's a whole lot of, he's pro-life, he's all these things. He would have energized, I would say, the Christian right, and without having to hold your nose. Right. And then he can nod over to the libertarians because he's like 50% libertarian because of his dad. And he could have nodded over to the libertarians and be like, "Hey, man, come over and vote for us. We'll make sure you get weed." Right. And then like also guns, like he literally shot the tax code with an AR-15. We could have had that guy. That guy could have been our president. Right. And like, think about what would a guy like that against a Hillary Clinton when you have the libertarian vote, and you could have probably pulled in the millennial vote, right? And instead we've got this clown. And I mean, I keep saying actually I know things I'm not supposed to know. I know someone who was supposed to be part of the Rand Paul campaign. Money was embezzled from the Rand Paul campaign. So he says, no, he was, and then the next day he gets a call to be a part of the Trump campaign. Yeah. And he's like, and that was all of us. We all got offered jobs at the Trump campaign the day after the Rand Paul campaign tanked because somebody like stole money. Now this is him. Like he could be lying, but he did end up becoming a major player in the Trump campaign. I can't say more than that.
And now he's got a G5. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I look at all of this stuff that's going down, and I don't know if I should say this on this podcast. Like, this is definitely one of those areas I probably shouldn't go to. But have you noticed how all these peace deals keep getting made with Israel in the Middle East? Like crazy right now. Mm-hmm. And you know what's supposed to happen 3.5 years in the 7-year stretch, right? Where all of a sudden there's a big turning on Israel.
You have no idea. So
I'm like, Trump, I mean, is he the one that's going to turn on Israel after all of this that he's been doing for Israel?
So here's what's crazy. So, the reason why we've been off our schedule the last 2 weeks is because I've been in PhD classes, right? My PhD class last week was on Israel and prophecy. Holy cow. And I'm like, this is a PhD level course. Now, I don't know if you grew up evangelical Christian, your experience with a lot of Israel prophecy stuff was usually the like really kooky guy with these really weird charts that's like crazy conspiracy theorist guy who is just kooky, right? I'm actually engaging with scholars who like do architectural digs in Israel. And like, these are brilliant dudes. And to have them walk through, like, you're like, here's all this like prophecy that's been fulfilled. Here's what hasn't been fulfilled. But here's all this bonkers, crazy stuff that's just been happening in the last like 50 years that nobody thought would ever be able to happen ever. And anyway, the next thing that's supposed to happen is, and then you got this guy. Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's exciting and it's terrible at the same time.
Dude,
Jesus
I was
could
like
be coming
watching.
back. I'm not even joking.
In July, I was watching. I'm like, it's technically 3.5 years in, baby. And then I was like, but who says it has to be according to the election cycle? I mean, maybe the 3.5 years doesn't start until January 20th. I don't know.
Oh man, yeah. You know what? I should ask my professor. Like, I got to tell you, like, I'm going to be real honest. I've made fun of a lot of that stuff before, like a whole lot. Like, where I'd be like, "Come on,
of
guys."
course.
And I think rightly so, because some of it was like, whoever was the baddie, at that time was the guy who was going to be the Antichrist, right?
Yeah. See, okay, guys, for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, we're talking about the Antichrist.
We haven't made that clear. Yeah,
we got a lot of listeners who didn't grow up in the church like us. So
yeah, I'm sure the FBI agents that listen to us every week to see when they're going to do the no-knock raid, they're like, "What's going on with these guys?
These guys are actually religious crazy. They got a cult started over here."
Pete, I got an idea. Let's get a place in Texas, right? We'll move some guns and whatever to like pay the bills, and then I'll work out my eschatology. Yeah?
You had me at let's move to Texas or get a place in Texas.
This is the exact, I just laid out the exact plan of Waco.
Exactly.
So anyway, yeah, it's nuts. It's crazy. Who knows what's going to happen other than the Lord? And I am putting my trust in him. And I'm not kidding. Like every so often something weird happens and everybody's like, this is the end. And it ends up not being that bad. So it's going to happen eventually. It might not be what we think it is. Did your assistant just walk in?
My assistant? Is that what you're calling my wife?
I was going to try to get you in trouble.
Yeah, no, we just got a puppy on Saturday.
I saw that, man.
To replace, the lost dogs. We're a big dog family here, and our last dog, a pit bull, died about a month and a half ago. I had to have her put down.
Oh,
and
man.
We hate not having dogs. Like, we're just a dog family. So we finally and I wanted to wait until after the election because I was like, my joke was, if I got to shoot my way out of California, I don't want to have to worry about a dog too, And we just couldn't wait anymore. So we found this beautiful, gorgeous pit bull, 8 weeks old, female. I prefer female dogs. And so unfortunately, my wife has been like not happy because she's not sleeping at night because a freaking dog is whining all night long. And so I got to deal with a wife who's running on too little sleep, if you know what I'm saying. So she's got to take the kids to school, and so I got to dog sit.
Nice.
But
nice.
It's all right. I like little Zoe. And then my kids are like, we're going to call her Zoe because Mackenzie watches some cartoon and the character's name is Zoe. I'm like, not a family decision here. It's just, nope, it's Zoe.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Zoe it is.
Zoe is somewhat Greek in its it's like the Greek word for life. There was a heavy metal band called Zao, which in Greek means I live. And they were awesome. Anyway, so good for you. Well, the dog's going to get bigger. That's a bigger dog like that serves a purpose. I
prefer bigger dogs.
I honestly judge people who get those dinky little pansy dogs because I'm like, they serve zero purpose. They're only going to be good for like a snack if you have to eat them. And so like, they're just worth nothing and they're just annoying and I don't like them. But big dogs, man, serve a purpose. They can defend you. And
pit bulls just scare people by their look.
Oh yeah, and they're sweet dogs though.
That's why like we were looking, and LA has a ton of pit bulls. Like almost every dog at the rescue center is going to be a pit bull because that's just it's the mentality of everyone in LA. I want a pit bull, and usually they want them to fight them and all that other stuff. And so it's easy to get a pit bull, but I was telling Jamie, I'm like, look, I don't want an older pit bull where, I got to worry about how they've been raised, how they've been treated.
Yeah.
But you get a puppy and you raise them up right, they're great dogs, incredibly loyal, great defenders.
Yeah.
Our last pit bull, when we had Luke and brought Luke home from the hospital, he spent the first 25 days in the NICU, and then we finally were able to bring him home. Like my other dog, the lab, which was the bigger dog, she got too close to Luke, and all of a sudden Ricky, the pit bull, was like, like backing her off, like, get away from that baby.
Oh,
I was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I want out of my dog. Protect my kids. Man. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I'm excited for you about the new dog. Hey, and it's dog. The dog will be all right. If you have to shoot your way out of California, he'll fit in a backpack for now.
Right now he would.
He'd be all right.
He would.
Yeah, and then he'll grow up pretty quick.
Wife, she's like, "Oh, can you go to the store? Oh, you can't take the dog with you." I'm like, "Hey, give me a purse. I can stick her in a purse because apparently that's what everyone does around here. They carry dogs around in their purses."
Yeah, that's awesome.
We'll call it a merce. It's my man purse.
Yeah, you need like a leather one, like your dog pop right out of it.
Dude, awesome. In New York, they had this thing where they changed the rules and you couldn't take your dog on the subway unless it could fit in a bag. And have you seen the pictures on the internet? Like people have the big old IKEA bag and they poked holes for the dog's legs. Yeah. And they're taking like the husky on the
That's
subway.
Awesome. I think that's awesome.
Those are my kind of people those there.
Same here, man. Yeah. Yeah. When you make more laws that I'm like, whatever, we'll just find a new way to get around them legally.
Yep.
Yeah. And wonderful ingenuity comes out of that. That's why we have binary triggers now.
It's true, actually.
Wow. In a strange way, we could thank the NFA for helping us come up with a wonderful idea.
But I still want a Glock 18.
Yeah.
It serves no purpose whatsoever. Like you burn through 17 rounds of ammo, or let's say you got a 33 round stick in it. Now you're out. It serves no purpose. I want one.
Yeah. Well, there is a small purpose. If you were just going to spray a room, put yourself a 75 round drum on that thing, you can spray a room.
That's true.
Would you ever watch FPS Russia? You remember that dude on YouTube? He spoke with a fake Russian accent and he tested out all these guns. He ended up getting raided by the ATF. It's actually a really sad story. Yeah. And like his guy who was getting him his weapons kind of died under suspicious circumstances. Like,
of course,
it might have been that the cops just killed him. Like, who knows? I don't remember the details, so whatever. But he was awesome, and he was shooting a Glock 18, and he had one of those 75 round drums on it, and he'd be like, "Those what the f I'm talking about?" Like, because he had that awesome Russian accent. It was awesome. It was good times. But yeah, recommend that guy. Oh, hey, Jamie, tell your wife we said hey. Tell her
Dan says hi.
It's good. I'm glad to know she's really your wife. After I got that first Christmas card from you, this is confirmation that this is your wife, or she's like the cleaning lady that you pay to clean your house, and you paid her extra to get in the
can
picture.
You just get in this family photo for me? Just stand there. We'll get a couple of kids too, and
No, but the kids look so much like both of you. Like it's clear.
They don't look like me. They look like her. Thankfully.
Yeah, well, praise the Lord. More like her.
Pretty much.
A little bit. Yeah,
I tell her all the time. I go, growing up, I didn't look like anyone in my family, and now that I have my own family, no one looks like me. It's still.
What are you gonna do?
I'm just this oddball looking dude, I guess.
Yeah, you know what though? Like it's the doesn't Luke have a little bit of red tint to his hair there?
No, not at all.
No, maybe it's the pictures. That's all right. Anyway, crazy stuff, man. We got to talk about all the crazy going on with this election, and of course, hopefully, in a few hours, our dear sister, Amy Coney Barrett. I hope she's our sister in the Lord. I don't know. She's Catholic, so I'm honestly not sure. But
she's probably more of a Christian than most Christians, from what I've seen her say.
Ethically and morally, we're probably on the same page. I'm not sure she's going to be in heaven. I hope she is. We'll see. I got to talk to her sometime about that. I'm like, this Council of Trent, it sucks. That's a whole other thing, though. So we'll have that discussion. As far as being a Supreme Court justice,
if you would have been in the Senate and able to ask her questions, your questions would have had nothing to do with law.
Oh, no. No, I would have asked about law. Like, honestly, like, this is actually a good example. Like, she and I disagree sternly on theological things, yet she is absolutely qualified for that position, right? I want her in that role. And if I was on the Senate, I would be like, you clearly meet these qualifications. In fact, I would say probably better than anyone has on that bench.
Really? Exactly. I look at her and I'm like,
holy cow.
Good night. This woman is great.
She's like a wizard of the law. Like, she
Wasn't that the best? What are those notes there in front of you?
And she holds up a blank notebook. She's like, this is just the notepad that was here. What does it say at the top? I don't know. I forget what it was. It was something like
Senate.
Like, yeah. She's like, it's whatever the heading is on here. Yeah, she's great. So she is she's a strict constitutionalist or strict constructionist regarding the Constitution, which means she's pro 2A in that sense, because she believes in the Constitution. So she interprets the law as it is written, which doesn't make her pro-gun. It just makes her right. And since the Constitution is pro-gun, that's a good thing, man. So it's good for us. And lots of other things where, man, if you just obey the Constitution, it's good for freedom.
Right.
Always points out, I don't know if you guys ever watched the documentary RBG. It was out a couple of years ago on
I didn't watch
Ginsburg.
it.
And it's
I couldn't watch it.
Oh, it's sickening. But I mean, and I'm sure she was a nice lady as far as her family goes and all that. Like, I'm not hating her, but her policies were awful. And she admits to not interpreting the Constitution in accordance with what it was actually written for. Right. Yeah. So, like, it's hard for me to hear somebody say, well, I know that they meant one thing when they wrote it, but we're really going to just apply it in a different way. Like, that's admitting to violating the Constitution. And that's, to me, that's like, that should disqualify you from being on that bench. That right there. And so now we have Amy Coney Barrett, who looks like is going to come through. Like, it's looking like we're going to have 52 votes right now. We got it. Right.
Which to me is so stinking funny that it's the Democrats' fault.
I know, it's the best.
That we only need 51 votes.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be 60. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And then they changed the law or changed the rules. And
and Cruz is trying to pass the bill to block any kind of court packing. That's in process like today. Because that's, I mean, this is it's just frustrating that the left is absolutely admitting to cheating the system. Like, this is what they're doing. They know that's what they're doing. They don't care. That's just what they're doing. And I just hate that. Like, I hate it. And it's frustrating to me. So anyway, we're in an interesting time. So we got that going on. So fellow believers, be praying that all that goes through fine, and that we're all right. And then we got to talk about this election, man, dude. Election. It's going to be interesting. So we're basically looking at polls that look a whole heck of a lot like they looked this time in 2016.
Right.
Right. When we all just assumed Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president.
Right.
Right. Well, then Trump won and everybody's like, wow, that happened. Right. Now we're looking at the same kind of thing. And, I can't remember sometimes what we were talking about in the pre-show and what we were talking about on here, but the silent Trump dislikers that are still going to vote for him.
Right.
Those guys don't really get picked up on a poll. And there's a lot more of them than I think people realize. And as we know, the further left that the Democrats push into more extreme territory, the more that kind of silent, I won't call them Trump supporters, but hold their nose and vote for Trump people, the more likely those people are going to get out and vote because the alternative looks so bad. And that's the interesting thing. So what people don't realize is that the Democrats are pushing so very, very, very hard this really left agenda because it radicalizes and it gets their vote excited. But what they don't realize is the blowback from that is a lot of people that are like, honestly, a lot of Christians that are like, we've got one whole group of Christians that are acting like fools, supporting Trump blindly. And then you've got a whole lot of other ones that are like, I would not support that man for anything, but I'll vote for him if I have to to keep us from becoming a communist country.
Right.
And man, the more left those Democrats push, the more those people are like, yeah, I'm going to have to vote for Trump.
Kamala Harris is like, I'm going to be the next president. Like right now, that's her thinking.
Man. When have you looked at her record? How many?
I live in her state. Yeah.
Crying out loud. Nonviolent crime. She's putting people away. It legit looks like she withheld evidence that would have exonerated an innocent man going to death row. For crying out loud, that should get her the death penalty, right? I probably better be careful saying that. In a court of law, like I'm not saying, please don't anybody think that I'm advocating harming political candidates or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying.
Or harming anybody. No, we use the law.
But like, let's go through the law. Like that, somebody should prosecute her for that. Like, not to mention all the nonviolent drug offenses. I forget what the stats are. Don't hold me to this number, but it's some crazy amount, like a 9-to-1 ratio, where she's incarcerated more black men than anybody else, right? I forget what the exact numbers are, so don't hold me to it. But it's a lot of black men. She's trying to push herself forward as the diversity candidate, and I'm like, you don't even have diversity in the people that you incarcerate, for crying out loud. Just wicked. And
part of that, though, I mean, I kind of look at that and I'm like, okay, well, black people by and large get arrested more than white people, and part of that is absolutely racial profiling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that you would prosecute more because that's what you're given, right? So I can't necessarily fault her for that if the cops are only arresting black people.
Totally understand that, except for if she's going to turn around and pretend like she is some kind of hero
she has done some shady stuff as attorney general and everything else, prosecutor. Yeah, she's absolutely just done some stuff that it's like, okay. Unfortunately, they have prosecutorial immunity.
Hate that.
Which is not constitutional, but the Supreme Court gave it to them, I think, in like the 70s. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so now they literally lie, steal, and cheat, do what they can to win. And it's not justice anymore. I mean, I've said this before. One of my really good friends spent 2 years in Camp Fed, and I read everything that came out of the court on his case because I knew the company he worked for. I had worked there, and I literally saw all the lies they were telling. They could tell whatever lies they wanted. They got prosecutorial immunity. Yeah. And he was an employee. He wasn't an owner. He was an employee. He ended up doing like 2 years in Camp Fed, and I think he's got like 3 years in probation or something like that. Man. And I knew he was innocent. I knew he was innocent before he went. But it was like, you either take the guilty plea or you go through the system and you'll end up with like a 13-year sentence. Yeah. And it's like, you take the guilty plea.
The way they stack the charges against you, if you're convicted, like, you could be 50 years for a relatively minor offense, right? And so the plea deal looks good because it's like, well, 50 years, and they get to lie about me, or I could take 2 years.
And they take away all your money. Like, your money's gone.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the prosecutor, the original prosecutor against the owner of the company, froze all of his assets. And so when his attorney went to him and said, okay, he needs to get some of his money back because he needs to be able to live, he needs to be able to feed himself, pay his house. He goes, pay me. And the prosecutor literally said to him, no, how do you think I win my cases? Like, I'm not giving him back anything. So you have no resources, nothing to fight against an entity that has unlimited resources.
Yeah. Well, they literally make up new money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw them do that with COVID.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I'm going to highly recommend the Tuttle Twin books. Have you seen these books? You need to get the Tuttle Twin books, man.
I don't think I've seen them.
A libertarian guy wrote these educational books for kids. I mean, it's like a little story, each one of them, but they're written from a pro-freedom perspective. So there's one on Bastiat's The Law, but it's about like, all right, here's what the purpose of the law is in society, right? And they're talking, I mean, it's all conversational and they're learning about it. But what's really fun is the one I just read yesterday to my son is the Tuttle Twins and the creature from Jekyll Island. Do you know what Jekyll Island is?
No.
So Jekyll Island is where that's where the Fed came about. Like there was essentially a secret meeting was held on Jekyll Island off of the coast of Georgia, where all these bankers get together with a guy who is supposed to be a part of a congressional committee, meets without the approval of the congressional committee at Jekyll Island with all these bankers, and they come up with the Federal Reserve, and it kind of just gets snuck right through in a backroom deal. And now our money's not worth anything, right? And so the way the whole thing comes up is these, the grandpa who's retired is struggling because everything's costing more money. And he's like, I have a savings. I worked my whole life. And they're literally robbing my pocket because they're making the money in my bank worth less every day. And he's like, how am I going to live? And I'm like, that's right there. And by the way, they're doing this, like, it does the same thing to the middle class, does the same thing for people in poverty. The Fed is evil. This is one of the worst, and there's all kinds of evil. Man, I'm going to go off on this. And we're not even supposed to be talking like this, but yes, the Fed sucks.
Where's the tinfoil hat?
I don't need one, man. That's the thing. When you try to explain something that's just like, this is a thing, like the, what is it? The Fed, like one of the federal, because there's like 12 branches essentially of the Federal Reserve. One of the ones has like a YouTube channel where they're telling the story of Jekyll Island. And like, they're just like, da-da-da, and this happened. And we're so thankful that this guy had this meeting and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're admitting in the video that he wasn't supposed to have this daggone meeting, right? Like, this is shady. But like, the video was designed as like a propaganda for the, the Fed. And I'm like, you're admitting to wrongdoing in this. Like, let's burn down the Fed. Oh yes, don't. I'm not, this is hypothetically in Minecraft. I'm not telling you people to do that. But I think if it happened, I would not cry.
The thing is you lose the Fed at this point. It really is anarchy.
Well, doesn't that sound nice at this stage though? Like right now, anarchy sounded pretty good to me, brother. I'm gonna be real. I
live in California, so no, it doesn't sound nice to me here.
Come on,
I got nowhere to hunt. It doesn't sound nice to me here,
man. Because I'm gonna tell you, anarchy, if it just went down, do you realize how much better anarchy is than this? And I'm not kidding. So like, and when I say anarchy, I'm talking about the absence of a monarchy, right? Or an absence of an archy, right?
An oligarchy.
Right?
That's what we got right now.
So if we were in this situation right now, well, like the cops don't influence most of what I do in a given day anyway, right? But I don't have to call the cops to keep my neighbor from coming over here and killing me, right? If my neighbor wants something, we share, we trade, right? I think we'd be way better off. Right now, I recognize not everybody agrees with that. And in your situation, it would kind of suck. So if you got yourself out of an urban center and you let those urban centers just implode, I'm telling you, I think anarchy could be a much better solution than what we have right now. Yeah, I know that sounds totally crazy to everybody else.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't know.
Can I tell you what? So I have some interesting friends, right? I have some interesting friends. They're not big, famous, anything. They're not, but I have people that work in jobs where let's just say they have their hand on the pulse of political things in ways that the rest of us don't, right? And one of them was sharing with me, and he's like, just a theory, man. He's like, I don't know. He's like, but it is very possible that Trump knows that the Fed is a big mess, and he is going to intentionally try to collapse the system through more inflation, so that the dollar becomes worth nothing and we start from a different standard. And I'm like, what?
Why would he do that though? What would the benefit to him be? Because everything he does is for him.
Well, here's the thing though. Is it? So I agree. It is. There's a whole bunch of things. No, think about this though. He's probably going to be the only president since Washington that is going to leave office with less money than when he came in. Right? It's a little weird. Now, maybe he's getting something else somewhere along the line. But most of the time, these guys have worked out deals, right? It's just the way the game is played. Like, somehow they made, $180,000 a year, and, they had $30,000 in the bank, and they were worth, $500,000. And then, they get done out of office, and they're worth $9 million. That's like that's shady, right? Whatever. It's how things are done.
Their spouse gets unbelievable contracts.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and if you ever read Clinton Cash and you see how the Clinton money gets moved around, that was really interesting. And that's just, I mean, shouldn't pick on the Clintons too much. That's how the game is played. It's interesting that Trump is like right now, he's tracking to have a whole lot less than when he went into the office. And he seems to know that. So again, I do not like the guy. There's a whole lot of question marks, like what's going on. Now, maybe he's operating real super shady levels and he's got some other kind of currency he's working on that he's going to have bigger ownership in. I don't know.
Let's talk about the one thing we all really want to talk about. Hunter Biden.
Oh my gosh.
Come on. We all really want to talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
What are your thoughts on that whole thing?
I think that according to like the eyewitnesses, right? He admitted that like his whole thing was the Biden name was going to get money for this company, right?
Right.
So you had that going on, and like all of his coworkers, like, yeah, he didn't do jack. He kept throwing his weight around about how his daddy was going to get them deals, and it looks like he did, right? So you've got that. Then you've got like he couldn't hold down. It didn't seem like he did much of anything else with his life, right? And then this computer, for crying out loud, there is. Like, what are you going to do? Like, this is tangible evidence. And the clown takes the computer in to get fixed with all of this information on it, right? His signature is on, the sign-off sheet, right? And then they're finding, dude, the stuff they're finding on this thing, not to mention the pictures of him with the crystal meth pipe, right? Which, by the way, everybody's like, when you share the thing and you mention it being a crack pipe, the independent investigators are like, false, technically a crystal meth pipe. And I'm like, what the crap? So you got that. Then you got all the stuff about like supposedly some of the images are of very young children.
I find it ironic that all of my liberal people that I have as friends on Facebook are like, well, we all know it's fake, that they created this whole thing and put it. And I'm like, you realize the whole Russian thing was faked and that we now have proof that it was all faked. Yeah. And you're still saying that's true. And then this thing, which we know is real, the feds have had it. You're saying that that's fake. It's like,
and there's no reason. So I remember somebody along the line is like, this has the earmarks of a Russian blah, 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 blah. And then like no evidence of that. Zero, right? That is totally media trying to skew.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then it was like Facebook and Twitter are both like, you can't share the story.
Yeah. Blocking a story from like one of the 4 biggest newspapers in our country.
Which is obviously a crazy newspaper. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They're not like, they're more like National Enquirer than they are like Wall Street Journal. But at the same time, it's like, wait a second, you're literally blocking a story.
Well, and just the reality is CNN is more like the National Enquirer.
Absolutely.
These days. Like, and I would say the same thing about Fox News, right? Like, it's a big game, right? Like, none of it is trustworthy. And the way things are pitched, right? You think about like even the fact checking, the way that fact checking is skewed, right? So like even just colloquial talk isn't allowed. Well, they'll fact check a colloquial thing where it's like, Dan Sams says his neighbor is just crazy, right? Like false, neighbor is not crazy. Well, like, okay, I'm not saying that they have some type of a chemical diagnosis. I would have been making a colloquial joke about my neighbor who does silly stuff, right? Like, but they'll fact check stuff that's spoken in colloquial terms as if the person is lying, which itself then is deceiving, right? That kind of stuff is driving me so nuts right now. Yeah, right. I have close family members that are like, let's get out of this country.
Where would you go though? That's the problem.
That's the thing. I'm looking at New Zealand. It's not
no
much
guns
better.
allowed. No, thank you.
Yeah, Switzerland, you get better for guns. You got some other things in Switzerland.
It's still totally socialist. So
yeah, you're just screwed no matter what. So I'm thinking about starting my own country. I mean, I'm going to go the Aaron Burr route, man.
I want to buy an island and go to that government and say, look, I'm going to buy this island. I'm going to pay you what you want to pay, but it's going to be its own country.
Yeah.
And on my country, number one rule, you have to have a firearm.
Yeah.
It's going to be mandatory because you are the militia.
Yeah.
for this country.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what, man. It's getting bad. Here's the crazy thing. When we joke about like wanting to start our own countries, you recognize that the way the United States was designed was for us to be a federation of tiny countries.
Right.
Right? Like, this is not crazy talk. This is the way it was supposed to work. For crying out loud. Ohio was supposed to be its own little thing. West Virginia was going to be its own. Oh, I mean, this is before West Virginia was the whole thing, right? Virginia was going to be its own thing, right? Like, you were just North Carolina. Everybody was going to be their own little. And guess what then? When you vote, you actually have control over what's happening, right? If, your life is not being controlled by some guy who's 2,000 miles away from you, right? It's, everything matters at that small level. And, man, it's a good thing we still have the Electoral College, or we'd be in worse shape. But I don't think we're going to be able to keep that much longer because they want that.
I don't know, man. I've said this before about the Electoral College. I don't think it's going to go quite the way everyone thinks it's going to go. There are more conservatives in California than there are people in most states, and our votes don't count. So by and large, a lot of conservatives in California don't even bother to vote because it's like, why? My vote doesn't count. And it doesn't. I mean, to say that it does, it's crazy. It does not count in California. Like, maybe for the propositions, but even then we get outvoted like every stinking time.
Yeah.
So if they got rid of the Electoral College and all of a sudden all of our votes actually counted, that's why I'm not convinced it would go the way everyone thinks it would go. I'm like, all of a sudden, all the conservatives are like, wait a second, my vote actually counts. I'm going to vote.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So you have urban centers. Right now,
I'm not saying we should get rid of it. I'm just saying I'm not convinced that it's going to go the way everyone thinks it's going to go.
So, and you have a point. The thing is what happens is then the motivation for a candidate to care about anybody else is gone. And so then he's basically got to go to like 7-8 cities. And he could just show up there and be like, guess what, everybody? I'm going to give you everything you want. Right. Vote for me. Right. And then he does. And then you can essentially continue to magnify the power of those urban centers and even attract more people to them to some degree. And then it's serfdom for the rest of the country. And so it's more about the long-term play out than the short term. But you are right. So here's what's exciting to me. What if we broke up California and Texas? Right? You break up California, now that little urban center gets only a couple of electoral votes. The rest of California gets its own, similar with Texas. Let Austin have its little, group over there. It's a whole different, we're into a whole level of conspiracy planning that's beyond what we should be talking about right now.
Yeah.
But
well, have you seen, I don't even know if we've talked about this because it's been out for a while, but the governor of California, crazy frickin' tyrant dictator that he is.
Yeah.
He put out the Thanksgiving holiday, like mandatory requirements for all gatherings. Mandatory, mind you. Mm-hmm. You can't have more than 3 households. You have to do it outside. Like, it's still the end of November. I know it's California, so it's sunny here, but not the whole state. Like, some parts of the state still get snow. I mean, it's like, you have to do it outside, no singing. You still got a social distance. You got to put your mask up unless you're chewing or, putting a fork in your mouth. It's like, this is literally just insanity.
It is absolutely
think that he can do this.
Well, and you sent me the video of them targeting the Jewish households in New York. Like, so I just want to this is one of, there's so many things that are so bonkers that people think, oh, that's some conspiracy theory or some shared on like some, fringe, whatever. This is an eyewitness video. Cuomo has specifically mentioned targeting Orthodox Jewish synagogues for some of the implementation of some of the mandates. And then sure enough, and if people are familiar with, for a meeting of Jewish men to count from in Judaism, you have to have at least 10, which immediately violates their no more than 10 people order. So the cops are going house to house, specifically targeting Jewish families or Jewish believers who are holding gatherings with more than 10 people, recognizing that like their religion stipulates that it has to be at least 10 people to be a religious gathering. And so they're literally going and harassing the Jews. Like the fact that like this is so bonkers, and the fact that that isn't like freaking people out, like
you always wondered, how did Hitler get people to take everyone to the camps?
Yeah.
He used the cops.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same mentality. Everyone goes, oh, cops won't do that. They won't violate. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
They're absolutely violating their constitution.
They're a law unto themselves. They look out for each other, and that's it.
Most of them are violating their constitutional oaths every day. Yeah. Most of them. Yeah. Well, I keep thinking, like, I think if Hitler was around and be like, man, all I needed to do is get this virus crap going. He's like, would have saved a whole lot of headache. This would have been a lot easier, man. Crying out loud. I tell you what, watching that video was hard for me because I'm thinking, like, if the dude holding the phone was holding something else, we could have ended this real quick. Right.
It would have gone another way, that's for sure. I mean,
well,
but it's New York. It's New York.
They don't have
basically guns. Yeah, you basically can't even have a gun.
They can't do jack. Yeah. So what we need is somebody. You want to make some money right now? We should run guns into New York City.
Oh my gosh! Don't
hypothetically,
say that. ATF, that's all Dan. That has nothing to do with me.
Hypothetically, in Minecraft, as a joke. I'm not serious. We shouldn't do this. Nobody should do that. It would be amazing to talk about how we should never do that.
Could we call it Fast and Furious?
Yeah, and you know what we would do? Oh, dude, we would bring together the two worlds, right? Because what we would do is we'd get these tricked out Hondas, lowriders with big spoilers, and that's how we would move them. So it'd be like a double entendre with the Fast and Furious.
I love it. That's what I'm talking about. Well, you remember though Obama with Fast and Furious?
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
arming up Mexican cartels.
Arming cartels, man.
And then they tried to deny it. They're like, no, we didn't do it. Oh, I recorded it. I have the whole thing on tape. Yeah. That was how they got nailed. They're like, no, we didn't. We would never tell you to do that. No, I recorded it. I have all of it on tape.
Do you remember the couple of years ago when the ATF posted that, like, just be sure if you're going to buy a gun for a friend that you buy them a gift certificate instead so that you're not breaking blah, blah, blah laws. And somebody's like, is that what you guys did during Fast and Furious?
Yeah.
I love it when people troll the ATF. And which, by the way, you should always troll the ATF. If they post anything at all, you should just berate them and make them realize that they're wasting their lives and they're harming people. And like, always troll the ATF.
We've got these police departments in California that will always post, oh, we were able to take this gun off the streets. This was and they like show the firearm. It's usually an AR build of some sort. And my post to them is always, wait a second, isn't that the exact same type of gun that you guys use? So why is it I don't get to have it, but you do get to have it?
Yeah. So isn't it still on the street if you're carrying it, officer?
Yeah, I don't understand. Can we take away yours? That would reduce the number pretty substantially, awfully quick. And we know that you guys shoot more innocents than any other group. So
6 times more.
I mean, maybe we should take it away from you.
Yes. We should.
Dude, okay, so Saturday, all of a sudden, we hear all these cars going in front of our house, like just honking their horns. And my wife goes, it's a Trump parade. It's a Trump parade. And like, I'm like, what? And I get up and I walk to our front door. It's almost all of them are trucks, right? And they got the big flags hanging off the back. And I'm like, half the flags have the support the cops flag. And I'm like, you guys, dude, you don't even get it. Like, you just don't understand.
I know
what's really going on here.
I know.
I'm like,
it's hard because it's actually, they've been catechized to both think that they're pro freedom and to worship the police.
I know.
And I'm like, you guys, it's not good. And it's hard you can't reason with them. It's just not going to go well. Cause like it's just rhetoric gets repeated to you. Right. And I'm like, hey, like I had a conversation with a friend of mine and we were discussing like how are you on time, by the way? You got to go at 3.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So just really fast, discussing an issue where excessive force was used to enforce a mask order, right? For a woman who was social distance, was outside, said she had asthma, like she just should have been left alone. And they ended up tasing her and a whole thing. And I'm in a discussion with a friend of mine about this. And he's like, well, you always do what the cop says. And so my friend brought up that, like, hey, we had a cop in Southern Ohio that was pulling women over and raping them, right? And so I'm like, is she right to just let him do whatever? Like, if I'm her husband and I'm there, do I just need to obey the cop while he rapes my wife? And I'm like, no, I should shoot him in the head. Like, my job as a good American citizen and as a Christian is to shoot a tyrant in the head if he's trying to rape my wife using his badge. And you couldn't get this guy. And he was like, well, I guess you would need to try to stop him, right? But he actually tells me, he's like, if the cop tells me to kneel down and kiss the ground, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm like, no, that would actually be un-American of you. Like, do you understand? Like, this guy is not the bastion of freedom. He's supposed to be protecting good and fighting evil. He's not freedom. Anyway, this is what we're up against, man. So anyway, let's see what we could, like, if you find a good country to move to, you let me know, because
if anyone can help us start our own country, we would be eternally grateful.
Yeah, that was on an episode of was that on Better Call Saul? Maybe it was.
Where they were trying to buy their own country?
Maybe it was on Breaking Bad, where like a guy was trying to hire him to do the legal work to help him start his own country.
I don't remember that.
But they were going to pay him in the currency of that new country.
Do you remember the episodes? I don't know if you were listening to the Church Planner podcast when Peyton and I were talking about the Principality of Sealand. Are you aware of the Principality of Sealand?
Is that the guy from Facebook that was starting his own?
Well, I don't know about on Facebook. So this is a true story, and I can't believe no one has made a movie of this. So this major from the Royal Navy, from England, I think it was like the 1950s or early 1960s. There's like an old World War II derrick in the ocean. Like, I call it an oil derrick, but it wasn't an oil derrick. It was like a gunning platform. Yeah. So it's like that big. It's not huge. He goes and commandeers it and claims it as his own country, because at the time, countries only went out 3 miles from their coast, and it was in international water. So he goes, well, based on international law, I declare it mine. It's my own country. So he calls it the Principality of Sealand. And he had like little cannons and stuff. And when people's boats would get too close, he would shoot his cannons at them. And so people were always complaining. He ends up going to court in England. And they finally rule in his favor. They go, no, actually, he can be his own country. It's international waters. He claimed it as his. It's his. So he's got this court documentation. Well, then, so he's got, he always calls his wife the queen, the queen is this, the queen is that. And so the king and the queen would go into England to get their free health care. They left their son on the platform, right? Because you can't leave it. You got to have someone there, or someone else could come claim it. And so these guys from like Holland go and take over it and like lock the son up. But the problem is the dude's from the Royal Navy. Like, he's a major in the Royal Navy. So he goes and gets all of his friends. They go take everything back over, lock them up. And then like Holland has to get involved because he won't give them up. He's just like, no, they're prisoners of war. They're staying here. Yeah. And all England would do is go point to the court case. No, he's his own country. You got to deal directly with him. And so eventually he finally lets them all go. And then everything got extended to 12 miles out from the coast. And he goes, well, we didn't hear from England. So we're assuming that we split the difference like most countries do, because it just so happens that yesterday we extended ours out 12 miles. This is a real thing, man. It's a real thing. This is
awesome. I love it.
The Principality of Sealand, man.
Oh, man.
Right now they sell
how do you become a citizen? I would go.
You can buy it. You can buy your citizenship. You can become a lord or a lady of the Principality of Sealand.
Oh, my goodness.
You can get a passport is available from the Principality of Sealand. I mean, yeah, it's its own country.
I like this, man. I'm totally down.
I don't know how big it is. It's
basically
probably
all the options are on the table right now because things are bonkers. Things are so bonkers. I'm like, let's just offer up some solutions. Freedom Nation, let us know what ideas you have. I mean, if you know about a landmass off, more than 12 miles off the coast of a country, let me know. We'll hook it up. Yeah. Anyway, Pete, I know you got to go. Thanks, everybody. Check out learms.net. We got a new class starting up, a self-defense class, Sans Guns. So if you want to check that out and learn one more bit of tools, that's coming out here in a matter of weeks. And other than that, you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the From Concealment Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.